Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City of Aurora Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. On June 26, 2020, the Governor of Illinois issued a statewide disaster declaration related to public health concerns. As head of this body, I have determined that an in-person meeting or a meeting otherwise conducted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act is neither practical nor prudent because of the disaster. This meeting will be conducted by internet teleconference without the physical presence of a quorum. Prior to the commencement of this meeting, all members of this body were verified and can see and hear one another. I further find that the physical presence of members of the public is not feasible at this meeting due to the disaster, specifically the practical difficulties associated with accommodating the public in an accessible, hygienic location that allows for appropriate social distancing. Alternative arrangements have been made to allow the public to contemporaneously hear all discussion and roll call votes live on the city's official website, on Facebook, and via Zoom teleconference. Notice of these arrangements have been given in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. The public may address this body consistent with the rules previously adopted and recorded and as adapted by mayoral order. Edward Stephen, Executive Secretary of this body, is physically present at a regular meeting location as those terms are defined by Resolution R20-124. All votes shall be conducted by roll call, and a verbatim record of this meeting shall be made and maintained in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Sue, if you would please call the roll.
Chairman Pilmer.
Here.
Mrs. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Bhatia.
Here.
Mr. Cameron.
Here.
Mr. Chambers.
Here.
Mr. Ellsbury.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mrs. Wasusafo.
Here.
Ms. Tidwell.
Here.
Before you are the minutes of our last meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on January 20th, 2021. Are there any corrections or additions? Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Chambers, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Bhatia.
Can I abstain?
Yes.
I wasn't there. Okay.
Mr. Cameron.
Abstain.
Mr. Chambers.
Yes.
Mr. Ellsbury.
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasusafo.
Yes.
Ms. Tidwell.
Abstain.
Motion carries. I will state, in accordance with the Illinois Open Meetings Act, if anyone would like to speak to the commission about any item that is not on the agenda tonight or as being held as a public hearing, they will have 3 minutes to do so. Please note that no one has registered, and therefore we will move to our agenda for this evening. The first item is item number 20-0880, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance and the zoning map attached thereto by rezoning property located at the southwest corner of Liberty Street and County Line Road from R1, one family dwelling district, to M1 manufacturing district limited by the City of Aurora, Ward 7. This is a public hearing. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Planning and Zoning Commissioners, Alderman Hart Burns, and city staff and neighbors. My name is Ed Sieben. I'm the City of Aurora Zoning and Planning Division Director. And I just wanted to give a little overview of our presentation. Starting off our presentation will be Steve Broadwell. Steve is a planner in our division, and he will give a little bit of introduction and background of the request. Following that, I'll go into some more discussion items, talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan, the land use, talk about the current zoning on the property, and then a little bit of the history regarding the townhomes in question just to the east of this, and what was planned there. And then just begin to talk a little bit about the concept plan for the Public Works facility. We will kind of go over it in detail. I'll touch on it, and then Ken Schroth and his team, Ken is our Public Works Director, will then be the last part of our staff presentation. So, and then after that, if there's any questions of the commission, I imagine Alderman Harp Burns may or may not wish to make some comments. And then after that, we would open up the public hearing. So with that, I can turn it over to Steve to begin the presentation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all again. And thank you for the introduction, Ed. So again, the nature of this this proposal is that the City of Aurora is requesting to rezone this property, which is located at the southwest corner of Liberty Street and County Line Road, from R1 one family dwelling district to the M1 manufacturing district limited. For those of you that aren't familiar with the site, it's approximately 24.5 acres of vacant land. Right now it's located in unincorporated Kane County. There are two frontages for the property. The northern frontage is along Liberty Street. And that's the majority of, that's the wider frontage. And then the southern frontage is more narrow, and that's located on East New York Street. Right now, the property is designated by the Aurora Comprehensive Plan, which provides future land use and development guidelines for the City of Aurora. The majority of the property is designated by the comp plan as industrial. Around, you can see where Ed's mouse is. That's the industrial area. And then the smaller portion that fronts along East New York Street is designated as office, research, and light industrial. So that's essentially the background history of the property. A little bit more about the nature of the entire proposal that we have here is, first is the annexation process, which will bring essentially the property in from unincorporated Kane County to the City of Aurora. The standard annexation process automatically incorporates a property in Aurora to the R1 one family dwelling district. And that process goes is concurrent, but goes directly to the BZE committee. And then the second part, which is the nature of this public hearing, is the city's request to rezone the property from the R1 one family dwelling district during the annexation process to the M1 manufacturing district. And we can get into a little bit more details, but yeah, this is essentially for the public works facility. And then I think that's it. I don't know if Ed, you want to add anything else or?
No, thanks, Steve. I just threw up a aerial photo to start while Steve was talking. So the property in question is kind of this T-shaped property. It does extend all the way down to New York Street in this location, and then it has a majority frontage on Liberty Street. It does abut the Legacy Field Townhome for part of the eastern area. The old car outlet is to the southeast. To the southwest is the TT Technologies Industrial Building. We have a few residents to the west, and then immediately across the street to the north in unincorporated Kane County is the very large Duquesne Precast Panel Company. Let me stop share and let me go to the comprehensive plan. I'd like to discuss that next. So we have the property in question outlined in blue, same property I just talked about. Point of reference, this is the Kane-DuPage County line. You see Liberty Street on the north and New York Street on the south. So this, as Steve mentioned, this 24.5 acre parcel is part of a larger area of far eastern Aurora Township in Kane County, which is essentially the area between Crane and Eastern Avenue on the west, which is right at the edge here, and the Kane DuPage County line on the east, and then almost to New York Street on the south, and then up further north here is the Burlington Northern Railroad track. All this area in this purple color is on our comprehensive plan as either existing or future industrial use. And what a comprehensive plan is, it's not a zone, it's not zoning, but it's a vision, the community's vision for the area. So when properties come in to develop, the city has a plan that would guide development and future zoning for what would occur there. And how we get to that point is based on trend and character of the area, existing land uses, whether the land uses are in the city or the county, existing zoning, whether it's in the city or the county, et cetera. So this comprehensive plan in this specific area has been designated for future industrial uses since the first Aurora comprehensive plan was done in 1984. And essentially there is kind of a line there at the county line. So west of the county line was shown in the industrial. And again, this does reflect the trend and character. Existing industrial uses, which are north of Liberty within unincorporated Kane County. And then to the south, there's some mixed industrial and commercial uses in addition to the farmland on the south side of Liberty Street. Let me go back to the aerial and the zoning map if I can. Actually, I will put on the zoning. So what this is showing you, again, here is the property in question. Anything you see that is not colored in, that is actually currently unincorporated, not in the city of Aurora. So that has county zoning. The property in question actually is zone F farming in Kane County. It's not zoned residential, it's zoned farming. Everything you see with the different colors is annexed into the city of Aurora. So to the east, you see the Legacy Fields development. You see the Reflections townhome development. The orange is an R4A zoning category that we use for townhomes. A little bit to the east, you see some ORI zoning, which is office, research, light industrial. Just to the east of Legacy Fields, that reflects there's some existing county light industrial right here, and you have the soccer facility and some other buildings here, some of them not developed yet. And then to the west, much of this is unincorporated, as I stated. This yellow is the school on Liberty, which is zoned R1. And immediately next to that is a recently zoned M1 piece that the city did based on the comp plan that was done about 10 years ago. Originally, the Salvation Army was going to build here, and they pulled out. So there is a small recreational facility there. There was a gentleman that was doing a hammer throw facility there, if you recall. Just to the south of this, there is some mixed commercial and ORI zoning. As I mentioned, the old car outlet, the TT Technologies are a couple of businesses immediately bordering this site. So again, the property is zoned F farming. As Steve briefly mentioned, when the city of Aurora annexes property, it automatically gets put into the R1 zoning category. R1 is a single family category. And then immediately, if that's not the appropriate category, based on the comprehensive plan and what it's proposed for, there'd be the case to immediately rezone that. And that's what we're here for tonight. So real quick regarding the townhomes to the east. So the townhome communities of Legacy Fields, which is south of Liberty Street in question right here. And also just to the north of Liberty Street, this is the Reflection townhomes, which border the county line. These were approved by the city of Aurora around 2000 to 2001. And we did know that there was future industrial, either existing or future to the west. When Reflections was built, because Duquesne Precast was already existing, we did implement a large berm. In fact, there's a 75-foot setback on their property with a large berm and a lot of evergreens. And while there is not that big of a setback for Legacy Fields, there's about a 30 to 35-foot setback on their property that is landscaped. As you'll see here in a few minutes when Ken goes over it, the proposed concept plan for the Public Works facility does have a very large proposed setback and bermed and landscaped area that is actually on the city property, which is to the west of the county line. And actually, if I could stop sharing this, and I will briefly pull up that concept plan as I'm talking. And Ken will go into this in more detail. But as I stated, there's a very large berm that is planned and a large setback area on the east end of this property. In fact, the closest edge of the parking area for the employee parking is 110 feet from the Legacy Fields property to the edge of the parking lot. And from the edge of the proposed building here is 183 feet from the east edge of the building to the property line. Ken will go into this in a little bit more detail, but essentially when the Public Works was designing this, we did want to respect absolutely the residents in the Legacy Fields. So because it is city controlled, it's actually a good thing. This could have been Duquesne Precast expansion, could have been another industrial user. And the minimum requirement for M1 to residential is only 25 feet. So again, we are totally going above and beyond respecting that use that's there and trying to do as big of a buffer as we can. Again, this will have a tall berm with heavy landscaping. Again, the more intense uses, the doors are on the west side of the building, as Ken will talk about in a little bit. And a lot of the storage yards are more in the center or in the south to the west end. Ken can also mention traffic, but there is an access point down in New York Street, which is primarily a commercial area. Both New York Street is an arterial. Liberty Street is an arterial going east from the county line. In Kane County here, it's a major collector, which is a slightly lower classification. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing because Ken has a little bit better plan to show. But let me turn it over to Ken and he can go into a little bit more detail about the actual facility.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for allowing us to present today. Today with me is several people from our engineering division: Jason Bauer, Ian Wade, Kurt Muth. I'm Ken Schroth. I'm the Public Works Director and the City Engineer for the City of Aurora. And let me just give you a little background on the department. So the Department of Public Works consists of 16 different divisions. And the current plan is to have 5 of those divisions relocated to this location. Those 5 divisions currently are in 3 different facilities around the city of Aurora. All 3 of those facilities are all repurposed facilities, meaning they were all intended for another purpose previously. For instance, Central Garage at Illinois Avenue and Broadway. That was an old steel fabrication facility. At the end of Middle Avenue is the electrical division. That was a previous vehicle repair location. Water and sewer maintenance on River Street, right there in front of Hesed House. That was the old Pace bus barns. So the reason for saying this is that all the managers over the decades that have managed these locations were basically told, do the best you can with these locations. It's temporary. We'll build a new location one day. So needless to say, there hasn't been a lot of maintenance done to these facilities. So about 3-4 years ago, we did a deferred maintenance study, meaning they go into each of these buildings and they find out what's it going to cost to improve these buildings. we're at about 5.3 to $5.5 million worth of work that has to be done to these buildings. And even if we did that, it doesn't bring them to a greater efficiency. It just improves their current standards. So for instance, the fleet department, these guys are working on ladder trucks all the time that they can't lift high enough to stand up underneath. So these poor guys are sitting around on office chairs, wheeling around underneath heavy duty trucks, trying to lift heavy duty parts up and not even be able to use their legs because they're sitting on office chairs. So at that point, we decided we're gonna look for another location to build a new facility. So obviously, the first thing we look for is at the comprehensive plan, and we look to see where is an M1 designated location, and something in that 25-acre range, and something that's affordable and centrally located. By the time you throw all that criteria in, you start running out of options. When this facility or this location became available, and it was a good price, and it's perfectly centrally located north-south anyway, and it's a little off center to the east, but it's on a major arterial like New York that that we've been building to heavy duty truck standards for a very long time. So back in summer of 2018, we were approved to purchase the property, and in spring of 2019, we did a RFQ, a request for qualifications, to bring on a design team to see what we can make this look like. And in November of 2019, we brought on the design team of Kluber and CUNY. And in March of 2020, we stopped the complete design because of COVID. So the design that I'm about to show you is purely conceptual. Let me share my screen, but it will give you an idea of what we're looking at. Can you guys see that? You can? All right, great. So the first thing we wanted to do from the very beginning is be the best M1 neighbor we could possibly be. And so that starts off with several things. And let me get you your bearings here first. So here's north is up by my hand. This is Liberty Street. Here's Duquesne Precast, immediately adjacent to Reflections Townhomes right here. Right here where the hand is, this is Legacy Fields. Down here is the now vacant car outlet. And way down here is New York Street. This is TT Technologies. And so now that you got your bearings, the first thing we want to do is minimize our impact to any of the neighbors with our vehicles and our deliveries. So that starts with making our main entrance on New York Street. So you can see we've got a driveway that goes all the way down to New York Street, comes way down here. And that accomplishes multiple things. It keeps trucks off of other roadways like Liberty, but also with our gate being up here, we can accept deliveries of any kind, and we can stack from way down here all the way up, all the way to our salt dome. So that I don't see a day when we would ever impact outside of our facility any type of truck stacking. So I'll zoom in a little bit here. And so as we go up, the next thing was, all right, a fuel island. This is where the squad cars would refuel. This is where public works facility vehicles would refuel as well. And we, as you notice, we kept that as close to New York Street as we could so that squads could come in, refuel, get back on the street. And then the next thing we look at is, all right, what are our most intensive uses? And that's going to be our yard. It's going to be where we bring in vehicles to stock material, and where we store salt that we put on the roads. So you can see what we did with this concept is put all those uses as far away from our residential neighbors to the east as possible. So you can see all this is pavement. This is a salt storage facility, mulch storage facility. And then this is a whole bunch of areas, and I won't get into the detail of all the different things that can be stored in those locations. So then it comes to the building. And so ideally and selfishly, from a management standpoint, we envision the office being right here, right where my hand is, because that would allow our management staff to be able to look down this hill here and see everything coming into the yard, everyone needing access to the facility. But then we started thinking that, you know, the best thing for our neighbors is to put that office as close to them as possible and turn all of our overhead doors away from them so they don't hear interior noises. So that's what we set out to do. And we kind of laid out this concept plan with our architect. And we actually ended up flipping the building completely over, putting our admin offices over here. And now we just have to rely on cameras and security to be able to open and close gates and tell what's going on in this area. So when you look at this, the next step was, all right, let's create a landscape buffer between us and the neighbors. And what you see here is a berm, as Ed mentioned, about 110 feet. So this is almost 2 acres of landscaping with about an 8 to 10 foot high berm. Heavily landscaped is what we envision. But then on top of that, we then thought the next least intensive use that we could do, that we could put between us and neighbors, would be employee parking. Just passenger cars that come in once daily and park. So we put employee parking around the perimeter of the building. Then we not only put our administration offices here, but we would put the employee support area as well. And employee support is a training facility. It's basically a quasi office. From the outside, it'll still continue to look like a 2-story office facade along this entire location. So when you look at that, when you look at the distance between the property line and here, and if you draw a box, we're about 3 acres of what of very minimal impact operations. And then if you draw a line from where our first any type of impactful operation would be, that would be the vehicle repair area. That's almost 5 acres or 300 feet away from the property line. And this is where the vehicle repair would be. So going back to what Ed was saying, the repair bays would all be pointed southward so that none of that noise, and again, this insulated concrete walls would be able to propagate that direction. And then the fleet storage area, the only way in and out would be through these westerly doors, along with the wash bays. And even our generator, we thought, let's put it towards the center of the site and on the other side of the building, because the building itself can act as the best buffer between the yard and the activity going on and our residential neighbors. So before today's presentation, we're looking at this, and even myself as a design engineer, I look at this and I start losing perspective of how big the site really is. So what we're trying to do is kind of give you some perspective from the first really non-office, non-employee parking location of any activity. It comes to right here. So that this is almost 1 football field length away from the property line, in addition to the 30 to 40 foot setback on the property. And then also to give you kind of perspective, let me minimize this. This distance from here, the property line to the face of our office building, is, like we talked about 186 feet. So then we looked around the city and thought, where can we find something of similar perspective? We found this. This is on Bilter Road. And so again, I apologize, we don't have elevations yet because we're so early on in the design. We're at concept stage, but off of Google Earth, you can see the camera is in the middle of the lane on Bilter. And if you measure from the middle of the lane on Bilter to this 2-story office facade, precast concrete, it's about 183 feet. So in our case, it's very similar to what we're proposing, but what you'd have to envision between the Legacy Fields property line and this office facade would be that 10-foot high berm that would encompass from here to here, be about 10 foot high with a bunch of spruce trees on top of that, then the employee parking, and then the facade. So I just wanted to show you that so that you can kind of get a perspective of how far away our basic facility begins. And then beyond that would be the fleet, and beyond that would be the yard. So at that, I will stop sharing and turn it back over to Chairman.
Thanks, Ken. Any questions of staff by the commission?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Tidwell.
Thanks, Ken. That was very comprehensive, and it looks like a lot of thought has gone into this. Can you talk a little bit about the lighting for the area, especially that would be on at night?
Yes, good question. We'll abide by zoning's requirements of meeting the thresholds at our property lines. So thankfully, whatever yard lights we have over here will be blocked quite a bit by this 2-story facade, and then the berming, and at the property line, I'm very confident that we'll be able to meet zoning's requirements right there. Which I believe, Ed, isn't that 0 lumens, or is it 0.1 lumens?
It's actually less, you need less than 1 foot candle at the property line.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
I have a quick question.
Okay. Go first, baby.
You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I just had a question about anticipated traffic and also the 10-foot berm. What kind of trees are you gonna put on top of the berm for the buffer? Is it like, sorry.
I got the second question is what kind of landscaping? We'll work with Ed Siebens' group. Ed and I were talking about a whole lot of evergreen trees, just so that they're green all the time and they're great for noise reduction, even in the winter time. And so that's what we would probably envision. And quite frankly, we'd like to put prairie grass around them, because with the prairie grass, that allows us to go steeper on the side slopes, because we wouldn't have to mow it. And by going steeper, we make it taller in the middle. And then therefore we plant these trees on top of a taller berm. So, but we'll work with this group on that landscaping. I'm sorry, I was not able to hear the first question.
Okay, the first question was improvements to Liberty Street. How much traffic is anticipated to actually use Liberty Street? And currently, I believe the portion where this property is a 2-lane divided roadway. So what is there any thoughts on potential traffic, additional traffic on this segment of the road?
That's a good question. So what we'd like to do is propose improvements to this segment of Liberty Street, along with Duquesne and whatever might develop to our M1 neighbors to the west. And the reason I say that is because to your point, we have a multi-lane section to the east. And depending upon the truck traffic generated by these facilities to the west will dictate what kind of section we want to build here. If nothing of heavy use develops to the west ever, I don't see a need to put a 4 or 5 lane section through here. At most, it would be a 3-lane section with a continuous turn lane. But for our facility, the vast majority of trucks will be coming and going from New York Street. And I failed to mention snow operations. So head of our street division, Superintendent Tim Forbes, he looked at the snow routes, and of the 36 snow routes that we have to manage, if you take away the routes that report directly to our salt dome there off of Montgomery, and you take away all of the trucks that will be heading off of New York Street to go east and west, we end up with 4 trucks that would be heading on Liberty Street. And those 4 trucks, of the 4, 3 of them are actually working a route along Liberty Street, and they belong on Liberty, and they'd be on Liberty even if they weren't coming out of this facility. So again, we don't anticipate a lot of truck traffic from our facility, and even the vehicles that, depending upon where employees live, I imagine a lot of them will be using New York Street as well. So we'd like to defer those roadway improvements after we find out how intensive these other uses are, and work with Duquesne.
And is there a timeline of when you anticipate to have this building constructed, construction timeline?
So this year, let me go back to the site. This year, the funding in the 2021 capital improvement list that we have, allows for the site work to take place this year if we had the design done in time. All our approvals, it would be the site work only, and then using motor fuel tax, it would be building the salt dome. And so what I would envision if all the approvals go through, it would be doing all the earthwork, building this pond, doing the earthwork, building the berm as part of that earthwork, putting in a water main through here, putting in some storm sewer and sanitary sewer, building this roadway coming up from here to here, and then building this area. And then if budget allows next year, it would be to build the building, and that would probably take about 1.5 to 2 years. So that's kind of the time frame. At best, it would be this area by the start of 2022, and it would be this area in late 23, 24.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
My question is, first of all, Ken, I think you and the rest of the staff have definitely provided an excellent detail overview of the property. My question is in regards to the vehicle repair. I think I know the answer to this question, but just want to confirm. Any vehicle repair will be done overnight?
So there will be some overnight during the winter. We have a third shift. That way, when our plow operation is underway, and it's amazing with these big trucks how often we have issues. Those guys, it's a skeleton crew, but there is a third shift, and that's why they're again out of view from this berm, from behind the berm. We have some storage areas here for the larger pieces of equipment that are waiting to be repaired inside the building. So we wouldn't anticipate outside repair of any kind. But again, we pointed all of the doors south and none of them point east.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
I have one more.
Sure.
Is there any fencing proposed to kind of contain the site? Obviously with the residential neighbors, I actually live across the street. So.
Yeah, and so to save, well, here, it's really hard to see. Basically, the fencing would be here. There's a gate right here.
Okay.
And that, again, that's why we want trucks to come in off of New York. We have no intention of staging any trucks here or here. They've got to come off of New York. The gate is very close to Liberty. So the gate would be here, and this fence travels around, comes down along here, comes down, and here's that gate well off in New York to allow for staging if they can't get the gate open in time.
Okay.
And along here, and then it comes around this vehicle area and then ties into the building right there. So the parking area and the berm would not be inside that fence.
Okay.
Hi, this is GB. I have a quick question, Chairman.
Sure, go ahead.
Is the purpose here today, obviously I'm the new person, so perhaps a little leverage on the type of question, right, this is for zoning approval or recommendation. Is there, the mention was about 1.5 years before the building's ready. I haven't heard about anything about finance and the cost burden to this. Is that part of this agenda or not really?
Sure. So our purpose tonight as the Planning and Zoning Commission would really be to hear the petitioner, which in this case happens to be the city of Aurora, but generally any petitioner, in their proposed use of the land. So we generally would strictly hear the proposed case tonight, which is the amendment of the zoning ordinance and the zoning map for this specific use. We generally would never cover finance and then or building plans in this case, because if we recommend approval, it would go on eventually. There's a couple more steps, eventually city council. But this would at that time be a conforming use as far as the underlying land. So I don't know if Ed wants to add anything, he can, but I think that if I missed anything, Ed, hopefully that answered
No,
your question.
Mr. Chairman, I think you got it. Primarily, the Planning and Zoning Commission looks at the land use of properties, and in this case, it's a request for this property is being concurrently annexed. And as I stated at the beginning, when we annex property, it's automatically classified as R1. So if the property will not plan to stay R1, right on the front end, like we are doing here, we would look at the zoning change. And that's what the official request is here, is the change from R1 to M1 concurrent with the annexation.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Chairman. Really appreciate it. I think it's a really well thought out plan. Thanks. I have no further comment.
If no other questions of staff at this point in the meeting, I will open up the public hearing. We do have a number of registered speakers this evening. And what I will do is I have the list of registered speakers. I will call them individually, and at which time I will swear them in. And then once sworn in, I would ask the speakers to state their name and address for our records. I will keep track of questions that you have. We will answer all the questions at the end of the public hearing at that time. And we will cover all the questions and with staff's input. Finally, I will state as well, the commissioners were all very good listeners. If you don't want to repeat what your neighbor said, you can certainly make a comment that you agree with your neighbor to avoid repeat testimony. So at this point, our first registered speaker is James Kister. Is James on the line? I see you there. You'll have to unmute your line. There you are, Mr. Kister.
Yes, good evening. This is James
Good evening.
Kister, and I'm
Sure. First of all, I'm just going to ask you virtually to raise your right hand and I will swear you in.
okay.
Right. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. If you just state your address for the record.
My address is 636 Declaration Lane in Aurora.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I've been a resident of Legacy Fields for 17 years, and my feeling is this project will negatively affect our property values. To me, it'll create a significant noise and light pollution to the immediate west of our property line, and would increase heavy vehicle traffic all around our community. Also, we currently have a serious problem with speeders using County Line Road as a shortcut. The road bisects our condo community in half, and without question, this project will negatively impact traffic on Liberty Street and County Line Road. We already see minimal police enforcement of speed limits on County Line, and adding heavy traffic, vehicle traffic from the public works on that road will create a hazard to residents who cross that street, County Line, every day and night to walk their dogs. So I see a hazard there, and children play in the area as well. And I've seen them cross that street. So my concern is that some of these vehicles undoubtedly will use County Line as a shortcut to get to Liberty or wherever they're going. So I implore the city to find another location for this public works project. That's the end of my comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker registered is Jonathan Wassel. Mr. Wassel, are you there? All right, we will move on.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, there you are.
Sorry.
You'll just
I'm here.
right hand virtually. I'll swear you in. Do you
Yes,
swear
sir.
to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And then if you'll just state your address, please.
My address is 114 East Van Buren in Naperville, Illinois. My name's Jonathan Wassell. I'm an attorney at Keough and Moody. Our office represents the Legacy Fields Condominium Association. The association had requested that I attend this hearing just to kind of go into some of their concerns. I actually echo many of Mr. Kister's concerns on behalf of the association, whether it be related to the traffic concerns, to the light and noise pollution. Also, and I understand staff, and I appreciate staff and the city's input into how this plan has been developed and the thoughtfulness in the plan, and the association appreciates that as well. But it belies the fact that it still does not believe, and that's association, the corporate entity as a whole, whom we represent, that we do not believe that this property is any longer suited for what the comprehensive plan from the 1980s had it suited for. And we understand that it automatically, when property is annexed, it goes into the R1 classification. But, looking at the zoning code generally, many of the provisions of the zoning code would seem to work against this property based on the residential and multifamily developments that have been developed, some 20 odd years ago. As the whole idea with the zoning code is to protect the established residential areas and the health and families by restricting nearby manufacturing activities. That's just, for example, 9.1-1.1 of the zoning code. Going into 11.5-6.1 in the zoning code, where the commission shall recommend no amendment for approval unless there's a number of qualifications, including, it will permit uses which are more suitable than uses permitted under existing zoning classification. Represents a logical establishment or consistent extension of the requested classification. And again, we understand that this is an automatic classification based on the city when it annexes property, and that the comprehensive plan does provide for industrial area for the area immediately to the west of the Legacy Fields condominium development. But taking that into account with the concerns, and again, we appreciate all of the thoughtfulness that's gone into developing certain restrictions as far as the setbacks and the landscaping and the berms that are proposed. The association still is concerned that, not enough study has gone into, still the traffic study and impact could be on this area, regardless of where the main interest is off New York. As Mr. Kister said, the County Farm Road is an arterial road that goes through the development itself, and there's already traffic issues there. And then also the fact of the property values of the association and the neighboring association. We haven't heard what that impact may be, and of course, I assume the city doesn't want to negatively impact any of its communities, and by communities I mean their multifamily residential communities or single family for that matter. Again, those are the concerns of the association, and they would request that more time and effort may go into kind of investigating that and researching that. But again, as Mr. Kister said, there are still a number of concerns, and the association is against the proposed development. And again, I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you having us here.
Thank you. Justin Andrews. Know if Mr. Andrews is with us. He registered. I will go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Yep. If you'll just raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And then if you'll just state your address, please.
I'm at 550 Declaration Lane.
Go ahead.
Based on the plan you just had up, I'd like to point out a few things. Where you're planning on putting the salt or the storage for salt is actually right next to the woods that are in the back of our property. Salt, I mean, I don't think I need to tell anybody, but salt kills plants. So I don't see how that portion is good for the environment as a start. Not to mention, we actually have a problem in this area with things like evergreens, and there's a fungus currently growing on our trees in the area that's actually killing them. So I don't see how any berm, no matter how tall, covered with evergreens is going to be effective for very long. And I don't think it's probably going to be budgeted to have those trees replaced constantly. If we're having an issue, you're going to be having an issue as well. We also have hawks, herons, frogs, turtles, ducks, turkey vultures, any number of things in the area. So I can't imagine that with the noise, light pollution, any of the pollution that's going to be going on, that's going to continue. I don't believe it's in the city's best interest to have such an environmental impact on the little green space we have left. I've worked for a heavy machinery company for 10 years prior to my current job, and I can say that it's not quiet. It is loud. There's no way that there's no noise pollution, no light pollution, or no pollution from the chemicals that are going to be in and around that area to the surrounding lands.
All right.
Can anybody say anything as far as the environmental issues they've addressed or thought of prior to this, or the impact that that's going to have on the area?
I'll make sure we ask staff of that as well, or the petitioner of that.
So that's a no?
Well, we will come back, sir, we'll come back at the end and have the petitioner answer all of the questions from those that are speaking at the public hearing. So just to avoid back and forth, it's a little easier to take all the questions and then we'll address them at the end. Anything else you share with the commission?
The only other question I have is you've mentioned fencing, but I don't see anything that would really keep any of the children in the neighborhood out of this area if all there is a berm.
All right.
And that's all I have for right now.
All right. Did you, sir, were you able to see the fence that they pointed out that surrounds the property?
Part of it, yeah.
Okay. I mean, the entire property will be protected by a fence, but we can have staff revisit that again.
Okay.
All right. Our next speaker is Cindy Warden. Cindy? Just wait a second here for her.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Cindy had indicated she probably would not be speaking. We had answered some of her questions prior to the meeting.
All right, thank you. Why don't we go to Mary Olson? You're on mute, so whenever you're ready, you can let us know and I'll swear you in. You're still on mute. There you are. Miss Olson? Can you hear us? Why don't...
Hello.
Oh, there you are. I'm going to have
Okay.
you virtually raise your right hand and I'll swear you in. Do
Yes,
you
sir.
tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And then if you will please just state your address for the record.
552 Declaration Lane.
Go ahead.
I agree with my neighbors, Mr. Keister, and our attorney for the association, Justin Andrews, about everything. I do have a major concern about these 3 schools on Liberty and the safety of our children. Traffic, again, has been an issue through the neighborhood. We don't get a lot. I don't see the police in here very often looking around or stopping people who are flying through from New York to Liberty as a shortcut. I have many concerns too about the air pollution. We already get heavy white dust from Duquesne Precast. They're moving cement and manufacturing cement building articles. I can see that, I believe that there will be diesel trucks stored there too, which I believe run all night and day. Is that correct?
We will get an answer here once we go back to the petitioner.
Okay, but I'm concerned about that. That'll add to the pollution. But those children in the 3 schools, there's St. Teresa, Young, and Johnson schools, all there, again, added traffic, added air pollution that they'll be close to, and I don't see how that is good for them or any of the adults in the neighborhood and our neighboring communities. I know Aurora prides itself on being a family-friendly top small town in the United States, and I'm just disappointed that this is, the plan is to have this so located to so many housing units. We're friendly, quiet neighborhoods. I've been in Aurora for 30 years, 13 years at Legacy Fields, and I do not agree that the property should be zoned as anything but single dwelling or park property, possibly city park property. Thank you for the time. I appreciate all the work you put in.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Kevin Connolly. Mr. Connolly. There you are.
Yes.
If you'll virtually raise your right hand and I will swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And then if you'll just state your address, please.
2314 Hudson Circle.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I would wholeheartedly agree with and stand by what Mr. Kister and Mr. Wassel were presenting earlier. It sounds like it is a very detailed plan that the city has, and I appreciate all the work that they've done. But again, I stand with my neighbors in what they're saying and what they're presenting. I've been a resident here at Legacy Field since it was constructed back in 2002. And to hear such a large project coming into our area is very disheartening. And I, quite frankly, disagree with it. I'm not smart enough to know all the details, but there are people who live here who do know the details, and I think you've heard some of those, and I stand with them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Don Cavagnetto. Let's see here. Is Dawn on the line?
Hello, this is Dawn.
Hi, Dawn. If you'll raise your right hand and I'll swear you in. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Thank you. And then if you'll just state your address, please, for the record.
My address is 594 Declaration Lane, Aurora.
All right.
And now that you know my address, if you know this property, you will know that I am basically on top of the county line. I agree with all of my neighbors and who have spoken before me, but I would like to add a couple of things. I also proposed this petition for zoning change. I believe our property values will take a pummeling. We will have a hard time marketing our homes in the future with this large compound that you propose to build on this site. I do have an appreciation for Mr. Sieben and Mr. Sarot's work in this, and I can tell that they are very enthusiastic about their new plan here, but the external obsolescence, we would suffer such external obsolescence with our homes that we would never recover from this. And nowhere in your presentation have you addressed this. Now, we have been around for a couple of decades. I have lived here for 16 years, and you keep talking about this comprehensive plan. Well, this lot was formerly owned by a private party. You guys, the city of Aurora purchased it a couple of years ago. I don't know how your comprehensive plan, could go back, decades and claim that this was industrial when you didn't actually own the property. When these homes were sold, that was farmland. That was privately owned. There was no plan to build such a compound. And if there was, I certainly, and probably most of my neighbors, would have never purchased that. I don't know how one could actually, get their arms around this type of data, but I would really like to hear some answers from these folks and the commission on the impact of our property values. We didn't buy here to suffer from this. With Mr. Schroff's presentation talking about the deferred maintenance of the various facilities, I can appreciate that, but that's no reason to plop this down in the middle of our neighborhood. That street out there on Liberty is 2 lanes without shoulders. Yes, we have traffic, noise pollution, and all of these other things. We worry about our children. We are, by the way, in a condominium and not in a townhome. There is a distinction there. We spend a lot of money on the upkeep of our grounds. And this facility that you have proposed does not fit. I would like to see it zoned in keeping, if you annex this in, R1, or make it into some sort of green. We don't have enough green space or a park. I am surprised. I think we all are very surprised and taken aback that there has been such, a plan to put this here. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit our neighborhood. And with all due respect, Mr. Schroff, the best M1 neighbor is no M1 neighbor that abuts to a residential community. Thank you very much, and I will yield my time back. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nick Herring. Oh, there you are.
Hello.
Hello, if you'll raise your right hand virtually.
Okay,
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right, if you'll just state your address and then feel free to address the commission.
536 Declaration Lane, Aurora, Illinois, 60502.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I was just to say I agree with James Kister's questions of how it will affect property value. My wife and I just bought our condominium here about a year and a half ago, and also concerned with like you said, the safety and the traffic of County Line Road, and just the decreasing of our property value moving forward. And then the any kind of threat to children and pedestrians in the area as far as truck traffic going through, and noise. Otherwise, I thought Ken's presentation was very comprehensive and made a lot of sense. And then the last thing I had was, I was wondering the hours of operation of the facility. I know in the wintertime, the plow trucks will be running all night, but just normal hours of operation, just wondering about that. And that was all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Solomon Kelly. Is Solomon Kelly there? How about Daniel Teen?
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yep, we hear you. If you'll raise your right hand virtually, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And then just state your address and.
My address is 548 Declaration Lane in Aurora.
All right, thank you. Please go ahead.
I want to say thank you to the chairman and the committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to participate today. We've been homeowners and residents in Legacy Fields for 16 years, and generally agree that Aurora, the City of Lights, is a very nice place to live. I also appreciate all the consideration that the folks have done to try to minimize impact. It shows a lot of thought, and thought is very appreciated. In short, from the comments that you see from the folks here already spoken, they're very passionate about their opposition to the planned rezoning of the land adjacent to this residential community here, and zoning laws are a protection. They're there for segregation between the residential, commercial, and industrial areas of the city. When done right, it promotes the health and growth of all aspects of the city. When done wrong, it can be highly disruptive and damaging. And so there's a reason why this property was the way it was before. That reason is it's a protection. Thus, rezoning it should not be done lightly. From the farming, let's say, I know that the R1 is by default, but it was zoned as farming before, and it shouldn't be rezoned without a full understanding of the repercussions. So there was a study conducted by the University of Houston on the spillover effects of commercial development on residential values. Obviously, every situation is unique, it's different, and we're not going to apply one formula to everywhere, but it's been shown that commercial development and especially industrial development to have a significant negative impact on residential property values. So much so that the Texas legislature began to require state-chartered commercial projects to set aside so-called mitigation funds in order to compensate surrounding areas for the negative effects. These mitigation funds were then used to mitigate the net negative impact from the development as far as within 2 miles of its borders. In this case, for this property, we're not talking about miles. We're talking about an adjacent property. Now, we can talk about berms, we can talk about 50 feet, 100 feet, 83 feet, and it all sounds great when you're using terms like football fields, but this is well less than 2 miles of distance. I don't want to take everybody's valuable time relating my research and details, but the calculations indicate for the 180 units in Legacy Fields, negative property valuation could be as high as $9 million of erosion. That determination of erosion is not a simple point-to-point comparison, but rather a comparative data analysis on property valuation change compared with a non-impacted similar subdivision in Aurora over time. This does not even take into account the countless other residential sites like reflections, et cetera, within that 2 mile radius of the property. So thus, to put an impact of the zoning change into tangible numbers for everybody, we're talking about the 180 homeowners in Legacy Fields alone seeking equitable compensatory relief of $9 million plus at the current property tax rate of 8.7358%, that would be a reduction of over $786,000 of tax revenue on an ongoing yearly basis. So while the exact numbers may deviate slightly from the calculations, these are real dollars we're talking about here, right? So that's $9.78 million in the first year and $786,000 of tax revenue impact every year thereafter. That's not a number that should be disregarded or ignored by either the residents or the city. When property values decrease, the city suffers, and that is a cost that needs to be considered by the city when they're thinking about how much does this facility cost to operate. Well, it costs yearly a massive reduction in tax revenue. Due to this fact, I know every single homeowner here in Legacy Fields is not only passionate in their opposition, they're actively passionate. Due to the pandemic, many are facing incredible financial headwinds. The last thing we need is for the very source of stability in our lives, our homes, and the value of the security of our homes to be decimated by this proposed project. I don't want to just make this about numbers and cents either. These are our homes. We live here. The city employees that are very valuable to us that work at this proposed facility, well, they work here and they get to go home somewhere else. And these promises, if we talk about what hours of operation, whatever, once it's built, and let's say it said, oh, the hours of operation are 8 to 5. If someone decides to change it to 8 to 6, there is no recourse for us to say, well, you know, you promised. No, I mean, things can be changed once the facility is built. All bets are off. As taxpayers, we want every tax dollar to go making Aurora more attractive, to increasing property value, not destroying it. Now, it's been a proven fact, the way the jet stream works, if we all remember that radioactive nuclear power plant meltdown in Japan, those radioactive isotopes, due to the jet stream, were found in California. That's how the wind works. We are part of a global, worldwide society, worldwide ecosystem. You're building a gas station in my backyard, right? And the wind's going to carry those chemicals right up our backyard, right through our windows. We're going to open our windows on a nice sunny breezy day and get a lungful of gas station fumes. We want Aurora to remain the city of lights. We don't want to hear the backup trucks beep, 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 beep with the snowplow all through the night. And it's loud. That carries for thousands of feet, not hundreds of feet. We want Aurora to remain a pleasant place to live, not the city of smells, not the city of exhaust, and not the city of noise. We agree that the city needs to have suitable facilities that serve to support the public needs, public works that it takes care of. We're fully supportive that the city have a suitable facility. We simply strongly object that it be built right next to our residential neighborhood. We propose that the existing protective zoning for this property, R1, be respected and maintained as such. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. Thank you for all your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charles Rolfs. Mr. Rolfs.
Okay, here I am.
All right, sir. I'll just ask you to raise your right hand and I'll swear you in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I always do.
Thank you. And if you'll just state your address, please.
Yeah, I live in 579 Declaration Lane.
All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Well, as you can tell, the people who've been speaking have been very, very kind in light of what I see as a absolute ram job of trying to get this thing through without anybody knowing. I am not happy at all having to find out the way I found out that there's not even a sign on the property designating this place was going to be rezoned. And then when we did, a neighbor and I try to check in on it, it was all of a sudden a sign appears up there, for 2 weeks. And again, we got like a 2-week notice and only about a few dozen people in our neighborhood got a notice. Doesn't that not smell? That already stinks and the diesel trucks aren't even in there yet. You should have notified. I know you did the basic, 250 feet. I understand that's the minimum distance of notification that you guys had to put out. But you know what? You should, whatever happens to my neighbor who lives, 100 feet away from me is going to happen to me too. Would it have been that hard to let our whole neighborhood, all of Legacy Fields and Reflections know that you guys are putting in this Public Works dump site? And I know it's a dump site coming because just taking a short trip down to Broadway, we took pictures of your Public Works facilities down there, and it's a dump. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't let my dog in there, let alone put it next to where I live. And everybody's been very kind and very gracious, but you know what? This makes me angry. I am mad. You guys have no business, no right to put this in next to our neighborhoods and kill our home values. This is, in court, I would have to believe a judge would have to look at that and say, well, you put this facility in, where it wasn't even supposed to go, and now you've tanked everybody's home prices $50,000, and that comes to $9 million. He's right. Our property values will drop, and what do we pay, like $5,200, $5,300 a year in our little homes here, our little townhomes or condos, and that's quite a lot of money. So, if our property values tank, then I expect my taxes to be cut in half also. But let's talk about what should go there. I always get grief from administrators that tell me, oh, you guys need to come up with a different idea rather than just shoot us down all the time. Well, here, you guys got this thing on your website, neighborhood support, the neighborhood redevelopment, neighborhood standards, and it all talks about your mission statement, infrastructure and human services program to improve city neighborhoods. Well, how is this improving our neighborhood? I know you guys sit there and you dress it all up. Oh, it's going to be beautiful. We'll have the berm. We've got, we'll have a big salt dome. I read about the salt dome. And boy, I can't wait to look out my third floor window and look at this giant salt dome instead of this beautiful field. It just thrills me. And not to mention the gas pumps and all the equipment that's going to get dumped there. And if people are listening to this, go downtown, have a look at the Broadway thing, Public Works, and see if you want that in our neighborhood, because that's what it's going to be. And if you don't think traffic is going to be brutal out here with this stuff, you're underestimating our smartness, because we are smart people here and we understand that this is going to be around the clock with gas pumps and trucks all night long, 24/7, every day, winter time. I know about diesel trucks, and you got to run them all night long in this cold weather to keep them running. And boy, that is going to be not only noisy. You ever listen to a diesel truck run, especially the size of these dump trucks and plows that we have? Noisy. And I don't know. I feel that, like everybody else, why are you putting this in our backyard? We've got this beautiful field next to us, and you're going to turn it into a dump site. Not fair, and it's not right. And let's go to the. I like going back to your city website and using kind of your words. The neighborhood support, build relationships between neighbors and city officials. Well, you gave us a whole 2-week notice, city officials, on trying to even see this and speak up to this. And then you go and make us get a notary public to even speak at this meeting. I couldn't see how you could make this it just smells of sneakiness, and this is not being upfront with people here. I mean, you guys are saying, oh, there's a handful of you guys who think this is a good idea. Well, we went out in a snowstorm in a blizzard, about a dozen of us, and got 175 signatures that say, we don't want it here. We're the community. You guys keep talking about, the community vision for the area when you started off, and that was Steve. Steve of zoning. I think I spoke to you earlier this week, and I asked you whose vision is this to stick this dump site next to us, and I got no answer from that. And I wouldn't attach my name to this either. So if this idea came here, so you're talking about the community. Well, we're the community. We are the 180 homeowners here, which at least 2 people to a house. So that's 360 people that live here that all said no. We all said no to this. Everybody said no. So I'm looking at a handful of you guys who want it here, and a whole subdivision that says, don't you dare put that here. And you're talking about, I know I heard Solomon, and boy, well put, Solomon. Our home values will tank. The stink from that diesel will blow our way because the prevailing winds blow from west to east, and all that stuff's going to come right in Legacy Fields, and we're going to breathe nothing but, I mean, I can't wait to go jogging. And I got to breathe diesel fuel all through my 2-mile run around the subdivision. This is not a good idea. No one's going to claim responsibility for this brainchild move. I mean, the idea of moving Public Works, that's fine. I read your article 2 years ago in the Beacon. I pulled it up on the website last night just because I said, why are they moving Public Works? Well, I saw that you guys all see the profit in selling the Public Works facilities down by the river because, you guys are all talking, oh, this is a gold mine. We got all this land on the river. We can, we're all going to make money. This is, let's hurry up and get this, this stuff out of here and put it out there so we can sell this property and make millions. Well, that's great. I got no problem with you guys building your whatever condos on the river or whatever it is you want to put out there. But you're not going to take that, and you guys know what I'm talking about. So don't pretend that it's a thing of beauty down by the river. That's a dump site. And you're going to put it out here and make us a dump site. And I heard all the stuff you guys are going to move out here, the stock material, the mulch, the salt, vehicle repair, the fueling tanks. You just say a dump site, okay? Because that's all it's going to be. You're just going to dump all this stuff out here. And not to mention, when that wind blows and the rain blows and that salt comes flying this way, it's going to corrode our cars and corrode anything that's metal, even our vinyl siding, it'll wear off. Let's see. As far as the law goes, as far as residential development goes, I don't know how you can win this one when you're going to try to put you're going to use residential area farming. I'll give you that. It was zoned as farmland. It is zoned as farmland. But you're going to turn it into industrial. And I think this qualifies as heavy industrial. And you're dumping it right in the middle of 3 neighborhoods here. You got us on the east, and you have the homes on the west. And I know you got the concrete place, but a truck every 2 hours comes out of that place loaded with concrete. And that's all that comes out of there. Every couple hours, a big truck comes out. Not the worst thing in the world. But what you guys are proposing, 24/7, constant gassing up, this is detrimental to our way of living here. This is a nice, quiet place. That's why I moved in here. It's great neighbors. It's quiet. We got kids. We got dogs. And we're just jammed in here in this little spot. And it's nice to have that field over there. And if I have to put in my 2 cents, and if I have to go back to reflections, now we got 175 signatures in a day and a half and then through a blizzard. And I'll tell you what, if we can get 1,000 with some decent weather and where we don't want this in here, and what we prefer, if you're going to rezone it for anything, rezone it for recreational. There's a thing that I've heard a couple people mention tonight. There is no green area. What has been the big cry of this county and the state, from Pritzker to everybody? Oh, we got to go green. We need more green area for people. Our kids don't have anywhere to play. You know where our kids play? They play in the street because there's no green area around here to play. We can take them and drive them over to a school, but most of the schools won't even let you on the grounds. So, so a park would be great. Put a park in there, a half dog park, half park for the kids. What a great thing to do for the residents that live around here that would consider that, wow, they are actually looking out for our best interests, not their own self-interest, so they can put their big dump site here next to us, but actually consider us as like, not only are we voters, but we're actually real people who go to work and we come home and we, raise our families and this is not a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. Recreational park. Where is there a park around here? Where can we take our kids? That they're not playing in the driveways and the balls are hitting the cars that are all parked, and we got 6, 8 driveways that face each other, so there's no place for the kids to go. There's no place for the dogs to go. We walk them around the same block every day. Walk around the block. There's no dog park. And dog parks are huge now. Green spaces are huge. So Reflections is we'll be all in on this also. I mean, they've got about 250 units over there, and these are a lot of voters come April, and I would remind people of that. And it would not. I'm a guy who, when I see an injustice, I have to fight the injustice. I just have to do that. It's who I am, and it's what I do. And I don't want no big salt dome in our neighborhood. I don't want to look at it every day. And as Solomon said, I don't want to listen to the big old trucks beeping night and day when they're backing up or pulling in. I don't want the lights shining in my window when I'm looking out the window at night and I have to shut my shades because I can't, the light's blinding me. And I just don't like how shady this whole thing has gone down with trying to keep this so hush-hush and not letting anybody. You guys have had this for over a year, and you guys could have gave us this information in the summer, and you could have put a big sign up there in the summer and let everyone know that, hey, this is going to take place. But, you keep people ignorant and you don't let them know what's going on, then you can kind of just, run right over them because they're unaware of what's going on.
Sir, do you have anything else you want to add? I mean, we will cover these. You keep repeating yourself, but we will cover these questions you have. But is there anything you want to add?
Well, okay, I'll say one last thing. No matter how fancy you dress a pig up, it's still a pig, and that's how that lot's going to be. You can dress it up all you want, it's still going to be a pig. And I'm done.
Thank you. At this point, I will close the public hearing. We've got a number of questions here. I tried to summarize and put them into some order. I might ask staff maybe a question before we get started is, I know we heard testimony from the petitioner about the way this was designed. We had a number of questions on traffic on Liberty, traffic that would impact County Line Road. I think what I saw earlier this evening was that this was designed to have the majority of the traffic, if not all of it, a high majority of it, enter and exit off of New York Street. But is there anything that can be done to encourage that traffic use New York Street? I assume is the building address for deliveries, is that New York Street or is it Liberty? I don't know if staff or the petitioner can answer that question.
Yeah, so we haven't thought about the address yet. Originally, when we were, can you see the screen again?
Sure.
Well, originally, when we were talking about having the admin office here and having all the doors face this direction, and then it was easy. It was New York Street address. But because our sprinkler room now has to be over here, we may end up with a Liberty address, but we will make it clear to all our vendors that they have to use New York Street. And that's the only place we will receive deliveries. And then as far as trying to limit the impact on Liberty Street, everyone has to remember that all the trucks coming in and out of this facility will be run by city employees, and they'll be instructed as to which exits they should use. So I see no impact to County Line Road because even our own employees, whether they're coming and going from the facility in their personal cars, they all have card passes that will get them in these gates. So driving through County Line Road is not going to make it shorter in any way for them to get to work. So I don't anticipate anybody, even on their own time in their own cars, coming to work utilizing County Line.
All right, thank you. How about maybe we can summarize, but a lot of concerns about noise pollution, light pollution, air pollution, contamination from the salt dome. diesel fuel, dust. I know I threw a lot out there, but if you want to, I know we talked earlier about light pollution.
Yep.
But I'll let you try to summarize those.
Yeah, actually. So from the salt dome, all the drainage is designed to, from the salt storage area, would be designed to go into the sanitary sewers. So it would not leave the site. And then the detention ponds, because we have to meet our own stormwater ordinance, everything you see paved would be tipped so that it works its way to this pond or to this pond. So one thing I failed to mention before is we've been working closely with our neighbor to the south on a potential design. But one thing, the neighbor to the west that spoke tonight might realize this, but this area to the west of us is one big bowl. And all of this water heads to this bowl. And the county on these streets over here have been battling first floor flooding in these residential homes for years. Well, we're going to do everything we can to make that better. And one thing we're looking at is putting in a storm sewer from this pond all the way out to New York Street. So now we're capturing all this water that would have headed to this depressional area, filled up and damaged these homes. Instead, it would be safely routed to this detention pond and then brought safely out to New York Street. So that would help that issue immensely. Trying to think. Oh, and the one gentleman had a question about the fence. And now that I'm zoomed out, you could it would be easier if I just tried it. But there's a fence that basically would keep kids from getting into the compound in any way where we store stuff. So the fence would come along here, go all along this line, come along here, down, over, around here, and then up, and then to here. So the only place that a kid could wander would be the parking lots and this front area and the berm.
How about fuel standards? Really all of the standards from air, light, noise. I know this facility has to comply with City of Aurora development standards and building codes. But any additional input regarding fuel?
And the fueling, the underground tanks, there won't be above ground tanks. The underground tanks will be not only meet the City of Aurora requirements, but the state fire marshal requirements with dual lining and all of the other leak detection systems that are now required as part of any one of those systems. As far as the diesel trucks, the reason this green rectangle, the storage area, is so large is so that we can put our trucks indoors for the first time. Out on our other facilities, we don't have enough indoor storage. And at that point, you're right. In a cold weather, you're going to keep the diesel truck running even when an employee comes in to use the locker room facility buried back in here. If there wasn't room inside the facility, he would leave the truck running outdoors. But in this case, everyone's going to be motivated to take that opportunity to use the indoor facilities before they get back out on the road. So I don't anticipate that being an issue. Another question was on hours of operation. Primarily, it's mostly first shift. First shift is starts at 7, ends at 3:30, except during for snow operations, we at the end of November through sometime at the end of March, middle of March, we then go to 3 shifts. But the first shift is still predominantly bigger than the second and third shift. So between March and November, when there is only 1 shift, the only activity you would see here would be if the city, the divisions that were housed out of this location had to respond to an emergency like a main break, a wind event, a flooding event, something like that.
Ken, can you go back on the fence and maybe, I don't know if you've determined yet, but any idea what type of fence that would be? If it's a cyclone?
Yeah, we have not determined that. We'll have to work with the zoning to see what those requirements are. I don't know if it would be a wrought iron looking fence, but made out of aluminum. We have not given that kind of detail yet.
All right. I don't know if maybe Ed, I know you covered it earlier, but maybe can you cover two items? One, the public hearing notice requirements and what is required of law and how that was handled, and the notification requirements. And then can you just provide a overview again regarding the city's comprehensive plan and what they designated this property to be based on the neighboring properties to the north and to the south?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So regarding notices, we're required by both state statute and our city ordinances. And what it states is anytime there's a zoning change that requires a public hearing, that could be a rezoning, that could be a special use, an annexation agreement, a variance, that kind of thing. So there's specific rules we have to follow. And there's actually three ways of notification. One of those is a notice in the newspaper. And I know a lot of people don't read the newspaper anymore, but we have to put it in the newspaper at least 15 days prior to the date of the public hearing, which is today's date. The second thing is a visual sign. We use the, I think they're 3 foot by 4 foot yellow signs that indicate that there's a public hearing for land use change. It has the date and time on there, and then a phone number and our contact information. If anyone sees the sign, they can call us. Those are required on the road frontage of the property in question. So in this case, it was done on Liberty, and I believe there was also one on New York Street there. So that's the second way. And then the third way is a more specific notification. That is to all properties within 250 feet of the perimeter of the property in question that is undergoing the change. So that was done in conjunction with the township assessors of both Aurora Township and Naperville Township. So that was done by our office, and we include in that notice a location map, it's kind of a summary information sheet, and then a more detailed sheet. And on there, we always say you can contact our office. So I know many neighbors did contact our office. I give credit to Steve of our staff, talked to many of them. I do also know that calls came into the mayor's and alderman's office, and we all tried to coordinate responses either verbally or email. We had a few detailed emails with questions that we also answered. So that's the official notices. As far as your second question about,
I might just clarify that that's regardless whether it's a little unique. The city's the petitioner here, but that's regardless whether it's a individual that has a variance, a developer, or any petitioner that for the city.
correct, any petitioner that is asking for what we call in general, a land use change that requires a public hearing. So the fact that we're the petitioner, we have to follow those same rules. And then the last question was, again, regarding the comprehensive plan. Again, the comprehensive plan is a guide. It's a vision. It's not necessarily the zoning, but we do have a comprehensive plan for the entire city. In fact, we go usually 1.5 miles beyond the city limits, or we go up to a line where we may have boundary agreements with other cities. Because this area is unincorporated, is internal, surrounded by the city, it's under our jurisdiction. So typically any of these unincorporated areas, if they were contiguous to the city and were to develop, we would annex them and zone them appropriately. So even though this industrial classification was first designated for this general area back in 1984, we do periodically look at different areas of the comp plan and based on changes, and it's been decided that this area made sense based on the trend and character and all the other items I mentioned to stay industrial for west of the county line. I was involved when the Legacy Fields and Reflections came in and were zoned, annexed and zoned. And we did work with, I think Wiseman Hughes was the developer of Legacy Fields, and I believe Montalbano Homes did Reflections. But take, for example, Reflections, just to the north of Liberty, that was adjacent to an existing industrial use. Many times a townhome use, you'll see a lot of communities that those tend to be in a transitional area. And we obviously do try to buffer, berm, protect whatever as much as we can adjacent to non-residential uses. And Reflections on the north there is a large berm with a lot of landscaping on their west edge. And those properties were developed by the developer and then purchased by the the homeowners there. And I believe those home values have maintained their high, relatively high levels. There's also a little piece of Oakhurst single family that's just north of that, south of the railroad, that comes pretty close up there too. So I think those have maintained their value for various reasons. They're pretty good quality. As the neighbors have said, they're good neighborhoods, good school districts, all that comes into play.
Thanks. Ed, the comprehensive plan would also include potentially any future park sites. Is that correct? I mean, we some testimony tonight, people requesting why that wouldn't be a park, but
yeah, Mr. Chairman, sometimes we do plan large regional parks, but in general, that is a function of the your local park district. In our case, the Fox Valley Park District covers a majority of the area of the city of Aurora. So anytime there's developments, they have plans for certain spacing of parks, be it local or community parks or regional parks. So we work in conjunction with them quite often.
thank you. My only last question, I know we heard a couple of things regarding public safety in general. I believe the fuel center there will provide fuel for the city of Aurora's fleet for police. But any idea the number of additional police this would bring in to that general area?
It would, I'd have to check with the police chief to see how often the squads are refueled, but it would definitely enhance the police presence in this area. And one thing I did want to note, someone mentioned about Liberty Street speeding. Once we annex this property into the city of Aurora, that whole area along the frontage of this property would then become the jurisdiction of the city of Aurora and the city of Aurora Police Department. Right now, it's under the Kane County Sheriff along the entire Duquesne frontage. So not only would there be an enhanced police presence, but the roadway and enforcement of that roadway would then become the city of Aurora.
Thanks. I believe that the summary of all the questions that I heard at testimony this evening. Are there other questions of the staff or the petitioner from the commissioners?
Don?
Ms. Tidwell, go ahead.
I heard someone ask a question about the ability of evergreen trees to remain alive, and I don't think that's been addressed.
Yeah, I guess I could address that. We don't have a specific landscape plan yet. That's something that we would work with Ken, I would imagine we would entertain the services possibly of a design professional. Oh, I lost my light, sorry. Oh, there we go. It's motion sensitive. But we would probably look at working with a landscape architect or a certain design professional on that. The reason I mentioned evergreens or spruces is because you tend to get the biggest bang for your buck with 12-month year-round screening and protection. I do agree with what the neighbor had stated that sometimes you can get a monoculture, which if you do unfortunately get a fungus or something, it could wipe out everything. So what we would probably do is have a variety of species. We may have different spruces, different pines, and then mix that in with a variety of canopy trees and some ornamentals, and maybe even some very large shrubs. Some of them get, 6-8 feet tall or more. So we would definitely mix it in, but I think we would try to focus on some sort of evergreen as being tend to be a majority, though.
Thanks, Ed. Other questions? Alderman Hart Burns.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'm appalled at this point. First of all, I didn't get a notice myself. So to not have gotten it is hard for me because I couldn't share that with the residents. Not only can I not share it with the resident, they were clueless too. To get it at the last minute, yes, I went over. We had a meeting. They gathered the petitions for me in the snow. I met with them because of the pain and suffering they had. I shared the same thing. I'll be honest with you. We worked for the city all these years, but I wouldn't run a gas station with the fumes behind me. I could tell you all kinds of stories about gas stations and how it may spill. I can tell you all kinds of stories. I can tell you I got problems in my own area right now. But my pain is the residents are well versed. They have the knowledge, they have the understanding. One may say, no, NIMBY. Yeah, NIMBY. Nobody want this in their backyard or side yard. You in one of your yard, tell me which one of y'all say y'all would want that in your yard. You don't want that near your house. No one wants that. So they have a good argument in saying that they didn't know. It's unfair from the city's standpoint. They didn't know. It was unfair that I didn't know. I read the email that said on Monday, I'm sorry, I did not include Alderman Hart Burns. How insulting. How insulting. For me to read that, it says that, okay, someone didn't care for me to know. So if you didn't tell me, you know the resident didn't know. So when you give them a notice in 2 weeks, and I didn't get the notice until I got the call from the residents, this is wrong. If we're going to respect one another, we have to start by respecting the constituency. They are serious. They are hurting. Wrong is wrong. If we cared as a city to share that with them, we could have done that easily. But you didn't start with me, so I know you don't care what they're saying. But as a commission, you all heard the pain. Yes, the city bought the property, but guess what? The neighbors are already there. They are already there. Their pain is real. They have seen the property all these years. And we know that, yeah, when there's a vacant land, something may grow there, something may come. We understand that. But in this case, I know we may need this use, but why here now? The resident has spoken. You got all the neighbors around this neighborhood, Reflection as well as the Legacy Field. It's just wrong. You have the school there, Johnson, St. Teresa down the street, and then you got Young. You got kids walking, kids. He's saying the kids have nowhere to play, but so what they gonna do? They're gonna be around the burn. You can have it fenced off. How safe is that? My concern is that I feel that with me being left out of the loop, it was wrong. And the neighbors feel the same way. To be left out the loop is left out. Why? Why? Why would anyone leave us out of the loop? I've been here all these years, but to leave me out the loop, it's sad. And to see the email that say, I'm sorry, I forgot to include all the Burns. How you forget that? How would you forget that? If the residents are upset, why wouldn't I be? I couldn't share with them. You know why? They were sharing with me what you sent, what was sent to them. The pain that I have is that at this day and time, we're going through a pandemic. We do not know what their property value is going to be. We don't know who all going to be able to stay or leave. It's painful for them. Their life investment is on the line here. And we don't care for our resident who will. I'm that voice that's telling you that I do care. I'm hurt for them because one didn't care to give the information in a timely manner. So if we can do what they asked is one thing, but the other thing is, I did speak to the mayor. I talked to him about it. He is interested in the neighborhood legacy fields, all of us getting together in a meeting. It will have to be a Zoom meeting, but he's interested in meeting to even hear our concerns. The pain that you're all having, he understands that. I'm standing with you because truly the pain is without knowledge, people perish. People perish because of a lack of knowledge. And if you share that knowledge, we'll know it. But if you don't tell us, we don't know. Knowledge is powerful. It's as powerful as you can make it. But if you don't share it with us, guess what? We don't know. It could have been a lot easier. It could have been a lot easier, but it didn't happen that way. To share, at least to have their input. They don't have any. The plan's already drawn. Everything is already done. How fair is that? And even as a commission, I know you were surprised. A lot of you all was surprised by what was said because you don't want that in your backyard either, or side yard. So in this case, NIMBY is real. The pain is real. And then, I mean, what about the night traffic? What about the day traffic? What about, what about the traffic study? No one's done the traffic study. You know how many, what's the ingress, egress of cars going up and down Liberty, and then of course, New York, but they're going through now on County Line Road. One may say, well, oh, nobody would do that. Who's saying that? Who got somebody else mind to what somebody else going to do? We don't know what's the employee ride to. We don't know where they go. We don't know how to get there, wherever they're going. We don't know that. But the pain that I have is that the neighbors are hurt. What is the traffic impact study say? What is it? I mean, do we have anything that we can share right now? I don't think so. I don't think so. But I mean, if we got, you all know when those heavy diesel trucks back up, they got a beeping noise. You know that. I mean, who want to hear that at night? You got residents that have children on the third floor. One gentleman said to me, African American, he said, I don't want my kids to see those police cars going in and out. They haven't been fair to us. That's heavy. And that's painful. I mean, one may not understand all the pain that one have, but we can understand what pain has been had right now. We do understand that. All I'm saying is, I feel that I was let down by not being included. I feel that. For the email to say, I'm sorry, I did not include Alderman Burns. So that was an admission that I was left out. How can I share it with the constituent if I didn't know what was coming for? It could have been done a lot easier. It could have been done a lot easier. And they still may not have liked it, but at least they would have been told by a humble person. I'm calling myself humble. Y'all know me. It would have been told by me, you know? So, I mean, I think I could talk a little eloquently. Y'all heard me. I want my preaching voice in there too. I mean, I'll pull it out. But what I'm saying is the pain is real. I'm standing with the resident on this night. And when the mayor set up that meeting to all the constituency that's listening, we will be there to talk it out and sound it out together. He said that we will have a conversation. And the pain of that is, it might be a little too late, but we will be talking. Because right now, if the resident didn't know, and I know the footage in reference to, you know, how many you would give the invitation to, or give them the, tell them what is going on. But the whole subdivision is going to suffer from this because beeping noise is beeping noise. It carries. Beeping noise is beeping noise. I mean, motors working on cars, coming picking up salt, that's loud noise. All I'm saying is, have we done a noise assessment? Have we checked the traffic flow? Have we done any of that? Do we have any studies complete? I guess one gonna say no, but can we get something? I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just standing with the neighbors. I have to stand with them. I mean, I stood out in the cold I don't mind doing that again. That's going to help lift the neighbors up, because pain is pain. And right now, to all the legacy feel reflection, I do feel your pain. The unknown is just that, it's unknown. And the pain of what we do know, guess what, is still unknown. It is still unknown. Not in my backyard. I am the big NIMBY. Not in my backyard. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Alderman. Any additional?
Yeah, I have a question.
Ms. Anderson?
Has there been any kind of environmental impact study done on any of the public works facilities in Aurora? I know that the residents were more concerned about a lot of the impact, and maybe in terms of safety, health and safety is very important, obviously. So I want to know if there's been any kind of studies done, and if there will be any studies done before this facility is built or approved, finally approved.
Yeah, so right now what we have approved is the design contract with the architect. We're doing the engineering as well, but all that stopped in March. So the traffic study would be part of this portion. I mean, what's been presented tonight is basically the concept plan that was presented as part of the request to purchase the property. So we have not put a lot of detail into it, but we're now in the stage of where those things would be detailed out.
Do you guys also have any type of environmental policy in place currently for your facilities, and like any kind of issues with the salt, eroding into the ground, anything like that in place currently for the city?
Yes, we would meet all state, county, and local requirements. So to touch on that, the salt dome, again, that would have to be drained to a sanitary facility, a sanitary sewer, so that goes to Fox Metro for treatment. The stormwater facilities, you'll notice on the plan, there were several best management practices that were shown. I didn't get into that kind of detail, but around the salt storage area are swales that would naturally filter the water before stormwater makes it to the detention ponds.
Okay, thank you.
Where it would receive additional treatment before being sent downstream in a storm. So we will meet all those requirements as part of the design. It's just we haven't done that yet.
All right, thank you.
GB?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I understand in principle that, with all the other facilities in the city being run down, that there is a desire to have one consolidated place. Has in the past an analysis been done whether there are other sites within the city of Aurora, not next to a residential property, that could be a site for this kind of facility?
We looked at all available properties at the time before we purchased this, and that goes back to it is very difficult to find a property that's 25 acres, that's as centrally located as possible. And the primary roadmap that we used was the comprehensive plan that was previously approved by City Council, because we didn't want to come in and ask for a zoning on a piece of property that wasn't part of the originally approved comprehensive plan. And so when you start looking at M1 zoning throughout the city, there really aren't that many available parcels out there.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Schroth. I'll turn it back over to staff for their report or their recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you need to close the public hearing first.
All right. Yeah, I will. Thanks, Ed. I will close the public hearing and then turn it back to staff.
Sure, Steve, I can give the recommendation. So staff would recommend approval of the ordinance amending the Aurora zoning ordinance and the zoning map attached here too by rezoning the property generally located southwest of Liberty Street and County Line Road from R1 One Family Dwelling District to M1 Manufacturing District Limited.
You've heard staff's recommendation. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Motion's been made by Mr. Cameron. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second's been made by Ms. Tidwell. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Anderson,
No.
Mr. Bhatia,
No.
Mr. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Chambers,
No.
Mr. Ellsbury,
No.
Mr. Gonzalez,
No.
Mrs. Uwasu Safo,
No.
Ms. Tidwell.
No.
The motion is not approved. If staff will state where this will next be heard.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Actually, we'd have to entertain you want to entertain a additional motion where to move this, or?
I believe it does move on with the recommendation as given.
So this is a Ed, you can clarify, the Plan Commission for those is a sounding board for the city of Aurora. So we will pass on a motion of denial for this case. And where will it next be heard?
Sure. This so the entire minutes and testimony, and then the final recommendation will move on to the Building, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee, which we call the BZE Committee, which is a subcommittee of City Council. It would next go to the meeting a week from today. That would be Wednesday, February 10th at 4 p.m.
All right. So before we finalize this case, we'll have a finding of fact that we have to complete as a commission. And our goal would be to evaluate the proposal with respect to the following. Is the proposal in accordance with all applicable official physical development policies and other related official plans and policies of the city of Aurora?
That information is listed in the staff report.
Does the proposal represent the logical establishment and or consistent extension of the requested classification in consideration of the existing land uses, existing zoning classifications, and essential character of the general area of the property in question?
I believe the proposal is not, because it's primarily residential, with the exception of one industrial, and therefore this is going to change the essential use of the property in the area.
Is the proposal consistent with the desirable trend of development in the general area of the property in question, occurring since the property in question was placed in its present zoning classification? Desirability being defined as the trend's consistency with applicable official physical development policies and other related official plans and policies of the city of Aurora.
It
No,
is.
Why don't we go ahead, Ken, and then,
It is. That's,
all right. Did somebody else want to add something?
I don't think it is.
All right. Will the proposal maintain a compatible relationship with the traffic pattern and traffic volume of adjacent streets and not have an adverse effect upon traffic or pedestrian movement and safety in the general area of the property in question?
I believe it will have an adverse effect. However, the proposal has not been studied enough to determine the magnitude of that impact to the neighborhood and traffic patterns.
Will the proposal allow for the provision of adequate public services and facilities to the property in question and have no adverse effect upon existing public services and facilities?
It's either included or will be provided.
Does the proposal take adequate measures or will they be taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to maximize pedestrian and vehicular circulation, ease and safety, minimize traffic congestion, and not substantially increase the congestion in the public streets?
Subject property is basically the bulk of the traffic is contained within the area of the project, and it feeds two arterial streets adjacent.
Additional standards for rezoning petitions. Is the rezoning a consistent extension of the existing land uses, existing zoning classifications, and essential character of the general area? I can state this is classified as M1 in the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the use to the north and to the south of the property lines. Will the rezoning permit uses which are more suitable than uses permitted under the existing zoning classification? If this were to be approved, it would permit uses that are more suitable based on the comprehensive plan. That is our findings of fact. We've heard staff state where this will next be heard. That would conclude this case. Any additional announcements by staff for the commission?
No, Mr. Chairman, I believe our next regular scheduled meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission will be February 17th.
All right. Thank you, Ed. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
A motion's been made by Ms. Tidwell, seconded by Mr. Chambers. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Batia,
Yes.
Mr. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Chambers,
Yes.
Mr. Ellsbury,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mrs. Wasserstoffel,
Yes.
Ms. Tidwell.
Yes.
Motion carries. We will stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
Thank you.
Good night.